You're very welcome back to the show now. My next guest is a former striker who's the second highest goal scorer for Ireland, having played for Arsenal, Man City, Sunderland and, of course, the Republic of Ireland. He's one of football's most respected figures who played through all of the glory days. Now, he's here today to talk about teaming up with Down Syndrome Ireland on their annual Christmas party. Niall Quinn, we're absolutely delighted to have you on the show. Not as delighted as Sue is now, because she made Izzy swap seats so she could sit.
She laid off everyone just so she could sit there.
No pressure there, no pressure.
I think it was more somebody trying to get away from me.
The last chat scared you, clearly. Come here, Niall. I have to say, I never knew this about you, and you've gone way up in my estimation. Your dad played hurling for Tip.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We were all brought up in the world of hurling, and my sisters had to play camogie. My mother's family were all great hurlers as well. My uncle, who I'm named after, was a Tipperary hurler, and my father was. So even though we were brought up in Dublin, you know, we always had that Tipperary sort of connection going on.
Yeah, and did you play when you were growing up as well?
I played hurling here locally with Robert Emmets, and played for the Dublin Miners before I went to England. Lost an All-Ireland final against Galway cruelly. Still haven't got over it, but yeah, no, it was a big part of our lives.
Yeah. And what made you gravitate more towards soccer then?
I was very lucky. I tried when I was 14, 15, that whole sort of elite programme, and I got a trial with Fulham. Malcolm MacDonald was the manager then. He turned me down, told me to concentrate on college. So,
really?
Yeah.
More fool him?
Well, it turned out that way, but I'd kind of given up and went back heavy into the hurling, and I played a soccer match one evening when there was no hurling match, and the scout had come to watch a player in the other team, and I got selected. So you need a lot of luck at all parts of your life. It's not all about just going through training programs and abilities.
So
I got lucky.
What did you feel like then when you were like, you thought that the dream of glory in the UK was over, and then you're plucked out there again?
I think it actually helped me in the trial period. I went over for 2 weeks, and I wasn't nervous, because if Fulham, who were in two tiers lower, had told me I wasn't good enough, I was hardly going to impress Arsenal. And it seemed the nerves were gone, and things worked out really well for me. Yeah. And after a week, they said, look, you're going home now. Tell your school you're leaving. We're going to give you a 3-year contract. So a week later, I was a footballer.
Oh my God, you must have been absolutely thrilled.
I was, and I was, you know, my mother and father were scared stiff at the time. You know, I was 16.
What age were you going over? 16 over there?
Just about to turn 17, yeah. And my mother's a teacher, and she wanted me to continue my education, but it was Ireland in the 80s, bleak 80s, early 80s, and I just couldn't wait to get over there.
Yeah, and like, I suppose, if you look back in Ireland in the 80s, like I was born in the 70s myself, but it was a different kind of mindset towards soccer or football than there is now, because there was kind of the GAA, the soccer, they were almost still the foreign games a little bit, so to make the commitment to do soccer almost was not a betrayal, but it wasn't as straightforward a choice as we would have now. It
kind of was. You know, there was a ban in place till 1972. I was 6 then when the ban was lifted and you were allowed to play all sports. I mean, just imagine that you were banned from playing soccer and never be allowed to play hurling or Gaelic football again. That said, I joined the under-8 soccer team, and my mother was the instigator to that, as long as my father didn't find out. So it was only a year or two later when he was in the pub and somebody told him, your son had a great game today for the soccer team.
Away.
He kind of scratched his head, but he was great. Like he'd go and watch all my hurling matches, and occasionally he might come to a soccer one, but it worked its way into our family.
Yeah, so I suppose when you were scoring all the goals for Ireland there, he might have changed his mind a little bit, maybe a little bit. But going back to the glory days, I mean, I put on my family WhatsApp last night that God, Niall Quinn's on the show tomorrow, because they don't care about anything I do normally. But God, the boys went up, like one of them, Brendan, he's literally quote tweeting me most of the Italia 90, every play of the ball you got. But that at the time, because the 80s were so bleak, I know we'd Euro 88, that was the first inkling that Jack Charlton's doing something absolutely amazing. Italia 90 really got the whole country, and it lifted the spirits of the entire country, which had a huge, massive responsibility in the likes of you and your teammates at the time.
It did, but we were just enjoying it, and we kind of went along for the ride, and there were other great things happening. You two were hitting it all over the world, and you know, doing what they did. Stephen Roach was winning the Tour de France. You know, people from Ireland started to feel better about themselves, and that particular summer in 1990, I think the credit unions gave record loans out. There was extensions. There was meant to be about, I don't know, 40,000 extensions built. None of them were built. Everybody headed off to Italy, and I think that was the spirit and the mood of Ireland at the time. And I'll never forget. You know, we were out there locked up for quite some time, maybe 6 weeks, by the time of the preparation beforehand, etc. And we kind of knew we'd done something important, but coming back in, the pilot flew over Dublin and veered off the path and showed us the crowds assembling in O'Connell Street, and that's when everybody kind of went, oh, I think we've done something important here. And that day coming in, you know, arriving at the airport, seeing everybody there, and working our way into town to College Green to be presented to the mayor and what have you, and every other politician that was around at the time. It probably took about 4 hours, and literally the streets were lined from the airport in, and that's the greatest memory of all, I think.
It's given me goosebumps even remembering it, because I can remember all that era like the back of my hand. I mean, you were giving away your heads in cornflakes. I mean, I had your head stuck up on my patio door, all of the team, from boxes of cornflakes. Like, it was mad, the hysteria.
I remember a very funny thing. Not long after that, I went to the commitments, and the drummer, I think, had a van, and in the van there was these heads that moved from the Irish players that you stuck on the front of the van. It was my head, and so I didn't star in the commitments, but I was. That was a moment where I went, wow, like, you know, I'm getting ideas about myself now.
Because I just remember my dad, God rest him, shouting at the television, like the whole country went to a complete standstill for every single match, and you called in sick, no one gave a damn. I remember Eamon Dunphy and Johnny Giles there commentating, and Eamon was never a fan of Jack Tarleton's style of play. The long ball, he'd be giving out yards about it, and then they'd boot the ball up to you or Cascarino, and that would be the style of it. And there was a huge criticism from, I suppose, a lot of soccer pundits about the style of play then, but it got results.
Yeah, nobody could argue with the way it ended up. And Jack Tarleton was often maligned for the way we played when we had the ball, but defensively, you know, we started a thing called the press, which they're all doing now in a different way. The problem was when we had the ball, we were a bit agricultural and...
Quick, get it up there, hope for the best.
And it was tough to see great players like Liam Brady being forced to whack the ball into the corner and stuff. But at the same time, you know, what Jack did and achieved, really he set the tone for the modern way that, you know, you press, you play the game in their half, you drop a fifth man into midfield. Everybody does that now. As I said, the problem was when we got the ball, we couldn't express ourselves, perhaps.
Yeah, but put them under pressure, as the song said. And listen, and then the odd lucky break you got, your noggin was there
the odd one,
to hop it in. Now, I suppose when you look at that, and I suppose the responsibility that comes with being a kind of an accidental hero, because no one signs up for that when you're 16 and you're going to play for Arsenal and you don't know what the future will bring. And then something as huge and as massive as the World Cup, the European Championships, etc., comes along, and you're this hero. And you're a hero for many, many years because of it, because of all the football you play. But very few people talk about when you step back from that and the impact that can have on your life, the emptiness that can come from
that's
retirement.
That's a fair point, absolutely, Elaine. And it's not that people would, or I would expect sympathy from people for that, for footballers, but you live in this bubble and it's absolutely fantastic. And then one day the lights go off in the stadium for you. You're no longer part of the dressing room. You're no longer part of that glory. And when I look back at it now, I mean, I suffered a little bit for about a year afterwards and really couldn't come to terms with it. It's actually the pat in the back every day, you know, that you miss, and people telling you you're great. It's like an energy. You don't know it at the time, but when it stops, you feel worthless. You feel as if everything you achieved meant nothing. You look at the negative side of stuff, and I'm not alone in that. And there's some bad consequences to that for footballers, you know. Gillian and my kids eventually got enough kicks up the backside from them for me to kick on and start going on again. And also then the guys, the Drummondville Consortium, you know, who put me at the top of purchasing Sunderland at that time and chairing the club. So I got my mojo back after a while, but lots of players didn't, and as a result, you know, marriages broke down. You know, we'd have a lot of friends whose marriages have gone, and players haven't found themselves. Yes, like gambling, the whole thing, everything comes in. Now, again, not looking for public sympathy on this, but it's just a pity that, you know, we weren't trained to deal with that.
But it's not even about adding sympathy, I suppose. It's just the fact that from such a young age, you are put in this bubble and then you're elevated to a certain stature, and through no fault of your own. And it's like losing your job, losing all your friends, your closest friends, your closest comrades, and your support structure just gone. It's a massive... Do you think they're better equipped now to deal with that?
I don't think it's as advanced as it should be, because when you think about it, the clubs just want the best from you, and when you stop giving you your best, you're of no value to them anymore. And that's a fact of life. I think had more been put in place, you know, in my time, I think it would have made a difference. Look, how important is it in our household? How much do we recognise it? Gillian went back to college. She'd left school at 14. She went back in her early 40s, got her psychology degree, and is now 2 years into a doctorate, where part of her doctorate is the retiring footballer and the marriage.
That's absolutely amazing. Of course, she was your rock through everything, Gillian and your kids.
We threw a few at each other.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I'd say she wanted to throw more than a rocket to some
I'd say you're right.
But like, you do need a strong person by your side to get through all of this.
For sure.
Now, when we go from that to the playing days to you had an awful lull, and then Sunderland. I mean, that was a massive part. I remember when you were appointed as well, and people are going, that's Niall Quinn. That's a funny one. Even though you're kind of more synonymous with as a player with Arsenal, Man City, but Sunderland is where your heart kind of lies.
Oh, well, it was where I finished out my career. I had 5 or 6 great years there. And
Roy was your manager there, wasn't he?
Roy came in later, but in my playing days, I had 5 or 6 great years, and I understood what football meant to the people up there. And it was probably more like GAA club, you know, the whole parish sort of thing. It's as near in football as you could ever get to that, because the people in Sunderland live for nothing but football. I mean, it is their religion. It sounds silly to say, but I think there was a Netflix documentary, you know, there last year, and it catapulted Sunderland onto the world stage. You know, Sunderland Till I Die was the name of it, and it absolutely gave the message out there that there's no club like this for what it means to the people. And so I bought into that and loved it, and I thrived, and then it was a pretty easy thing to do to get a group of people to believe in that and go back and try and make it better.
Because if you look at the game now, and there's massive money coming into the game, particularly in the UK. If you look, like Man City were bought over by this our consortium. You look at now, there's talks of other major clubs being bought over, and the money they're plugging in is huge. It's the hundreds and hundreds of millions.
Yes.
But then you get someone like a couple of years ago, like Leicester, who didn't have that sort of backing and flew it up. How important is it to actually have the dressing room in a right headspace and the camaraderie, as opposed to the individual stars? Because do you think we're gone too far down the kind of Ronaldo route, looking for the Ronaldos and the Salahs rather than the...
Yes, but Ronaldo and Salah only do what they do because of teammates around them. So you know, the trick, of course, for any manager in today's world is how do you stop money being the motivator, and how do you bring camaraderie, team spirit, and an understanding that you're doing it together. You can do it through fear. I think that stopped to work. I think, you know, Sir Alex Ferguson had that sort of policy in place. But the modern player and the culture of football now, I think it's somebody who can play all the players to buy into something. Guardiola is a classic example. That Klopp at Liverpool, you know.
God, he's the perfect example of that.
Great.
They love him and they love each other.
And you can see why that it's a... You know, it's a real holistic sort of relationship. But back in my day, you were scared of your life to make a mistake, and you get some sort of abuse showed at you if you, you know, if you did something wrong at half-time. But I think those days are gone, you know, for the better in many ways. But then the game has changed in ways that maybe aren't. You know, there is too much money around, and fans are being asked to give this loyalty and love to a team. And sometimes that team are employing players who are just on a journey, bag as much as they can, and get out of there. So yeah, no, there are issues.
Yeah, that's when you see someone like Salah who has stayed put. It's kind of nice, because he could literally get loads of money anywhere else, and he's stayed put for the moment.
But he's sensible, and I think he understands what it will mean forevermore if they make the breakthrough and finally win a Premier League title.
Yeah. Now, we were talking about yourself and your teammates. You're friendly with a load of them still, I presume, particularly Kevin Kilban, because that's the reason you're here. Kevin, who we know well in this building as well. I know poor Niall's very upset I'm not Tommy Martin now.
No, not at all. I'm delighted to be here, Elaine. Get away from Tommy.
But you got involved with Down Syndrome Ireland through Kevin. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Kevin has a young girl with Down syndrome, gorgeous girl, and you know, Elsie. You know, I was able to find out a lot just listening to Kevin, and how brilliant you know, life is for him and his daughter. So that's where it started from. I was always intrigued, and then I met Gary Owens from Down Syndrome Ireland, who started to alert me to ways of thinking that I hadn't bought into before when I thought of people with Down syndrome. And what he has done to me, and I hope that we could get out of today's programme, anybody watching, listening, we shouldn't concentrate on a person with Down syndrome's disability. We should concentrate on their ability. And it's amazing. It opened up a whole, you know, sort of new headspace for me, because I was guilty of, you know, closeting and putting people with Down syndrome in a bracket. But when I started to hear what Down Syndrome Ireland are doing, and the way that's been paved for people with Down syndrome to enter the workplace over the last couple of years, and there's been sort of a post-schooling attempt between Down Syndrome Ireland and Trinity College to prepare people with Down syndrome for the workplace, and the success of it and what it means, it's totally transformed how I think about people with Down syndrome. And I have to say, it's a message that if it gets out there, it will for everybody too. You know, right now, it's been a 2-year cycle. 38 people already have jobs from moving through that system. But the main bulk, there's 240 people coming to the end of their ability programme. You know, it's fascinating to see them being prepared for the common workplace. And where can they go? What jobs are suitable to them? Hairdressing, fantastic. You know, business admin, you know, the stuff that others might find mundane and boring. You know, people with Down syndrome thrive on that. Horticulture, you know, hospitality. There are so many areas, and it's great to know that in the process over the last couple of years, as this was coming to fruition, the commitment of certain companies to take part, and businesses. Anua Hotels, for instance, have promised that every hotel will take one of the candidates.
That's fantastic.
Which is great. House, where we're having the function on Friday, the Christmas party. Alan Clancy already has 4 people with Down syndrome and has promised to go to 10. There are groups like Blow, who are in the hairdressing world, and Alpha Parv. They've committed to making big numbers as well. So there's already interviews taking place. And there's one thing that I would like to leave with, which is quite amazing, that anybody who is working with people with Down syndrome in the common workplace, they stop complaining about mundane things. They understand how brilliant, you know, perhaps it is to be in the company of people with Down syndrome, and also how they apply to their work. Their loyalty is incredible. They'll be there every Monday morning, hail, snow, whatever. And I think in general, I now understand that there is no doubt that in the past, people with Down syndrome were stigmatized and they were put in a box and told they can't achieve. That world is changing, and that's why I'm asked to do a lot of things. And it was so revealing for me to see where Down Syndrome Ireland is bringing our thought process. So if people watching here today change their mind one little bit about, you know something, people with Down syndrome should be in the workplace, then it's been really
I'll tell you something interesting now. I've been here almost 20 years now. Next month I'll be in this building from TV3 to Virgin Media. But one person who's here, I think perhaps longer than me, if not as long, is Vicky.
Yeah.
She's Down syndrome, and she's been here. She's one of the myself and one of the last ones standing, basically.
But how integral? She's integral, isn't she?
Completely. She's just part of the furniture at this stage, and she ain't going anywhere, as loyal as they come. So it's lovely to see. Now the party as well is in house. You mentioned that.
Yes, that's on Friday. It's a Christmas party. There's still some tickets left to go. So if you're in around Dublin, you want to come in and see what's going on. There's plenty of things going on. Maria Doyle Kennedy from Commitments fame, she'll speak about the impact of how her family, who have a person with Down syndrome in her family, and them getting a job, and what it meant to the family and what it meant to the person themselves. That's cool. So she's going to speak, and there's actually a role reversal. Matt Cooper is emceeing for the day, but
you roped him in, did you?
yeah, absolutely. But I'm actually going to go up at one stage, and I'm going to interview a person with Down syndrome called Ross O'Neill. And Ross O'Neill is a super guy. He plays football. He's very opinionated on football, so I'm going to interview him about that. But he's in the workplace. He's just, I hope he's going to show people what you can achieve if you believe. And it was a little bit of extra education to normal schooling where people like Ross can go. So I'm looking forward. I've never interviewed anybody before in my life, but I'm told, to be ready that he's not going to hold back.
I'd say he won't. It sounds like you might be in a bit of trouble there.
We'll go for it.
Listen, we're going way over time here. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure.